Welcome back to Tea Talk Caregiver 101. Have tea with me. What type of tea you drinking today? I'm drinking classic green tea. Okay, you guys, let's get started. Today topic is communication. And I have been, doing some research. And one is the stats that I found that was very important, that in communication, only 7% is verbal and 93% is nonverbal. So as a caregiver, you know, all the people we take care are different. Some people on the IDD spectrum, some people are high functioning, some people are low functioning, some people are verbal, some people are nonverbal, some people are limited verbal. So, or the same thing goes for home caregivers that taking care of their loved ones too. They have to really, really, think about some things when they providing care, like, does the person I care for, the real true question is, how do they communicate? Because we got some nonverbals that communicate with sounds, gestures, eyes, body language, and things of that sort. And then you got the ones that's verbal. And yes, they could talk and they could tell you what they want, but at the end of the day, when they want to eat, they go into behaviors. When they want to go to the bathroom, they still displaying certain gestures and they're not really telling you. So as a caregiver, we have to figure out how the person we care for, how do they communicate with us? And that could be challenging. That could be frustrating, and for some, just emotional. Because as a caregiver, we just want the people we take care of just to tell us what they want, and we get frustrated. They trying to say something, they do a gesture, and we just want to scream. Just tell me what you want. And we know that's not realistic. So I'm going to talk about four steps how to communicate with a nonverbal, or some things that you could put in place that make communication easier with someone that's a nonverbal, or with a limited verbal person that you take care of. Number one, and I mentioned it before, determine how the person communicate with you. Whether they're sign language, their own sign language, they made up sign language. Do they write what they want? Because there's some people I've worked with in the past that in their ISPs or their IEPs, it says they communicate with writing, and I will, write down what I want to ask them, and they'll respond and write back. Gesture. Do they, put their hands to their mouth? Do they say they want something to drink? Or, what are they trying to say? And I really have some ones that cuss. They cuss everything. That's how they communicate. They gonna cuss you out, because the reason why the ones that communicate with cussing, in my opinion, by working in the field, when they feel that some caregivers are busy, some caregivers are cleaning, some caregivers are doing other duties, and they feel if they act a certain type of way, that the caregiver would give them attention, no matter if it's good attention, no matter if it's bad attention. I have been called every name in the book. And I'm sure that a lot of caregivers that work at homes or work with their family members can say the same thing. What about behaviors? Johnny knock his head to the wall. What is he trying to say? Johnny in the store throwing himself on the ground. But let's talk about the behavior before he threw himself on the ground. We went down the candy aisle and Johnny was pointing at some candy. And maybe the caregiver could have said no or didn't acknowledge Johnny. So Johnny just like, okay, I'm going to throw myself on the ground. I'm going to keep throwing myself on the ground. I'm going to get the caregiver attention, and then I'm going to try to get what I want from the store. So those are some of the things you got to really think about as a caregiver of what your individual is trying to say. Or you in the car, you driving Johnny to a doctor's appointment, and Johnny just hold off and just smacks you in the car. And as a caregiver, you mad, you upset, you angry. But Johnny could be trying to communicate. He wants something that he don't know how to tell you. Well, he can't tell you I want to stop at a Burger King or when I was in a doctor's office, when you was talking about my diagnosis with the doctor, you was saying some things like Johnny was angry, Johnny was mad, Johnny acts frustrated, he always be mad. So I can't tell you the things you said at the doctor's office. I was upset. So when we get back in the car, I'm just going to hold off and smack you. So those some type of things that we don't think about how they communicate, what they're trying to say. And there's some people that communicate with pictures. What it is that, I work for providers. People had like pictures. Some people had like tack boards on the wall. And when they want something to drink, they'll go point at it. When they want something to eat, they'll go point at. Or staff would communicate with them and point to medicine, basically telling them, hey, it's time to take your medicine. So that's some of the things of it is how people communicate. Body language. If Johnny crosses his arm, what do we get when we meet people and they crossing their arm? And that is why I got a habit of crossing my arms. I ain't gonna even lie. Sometimes I just cross my arms for no reason because it's comfortable. But then when you at church, when you at the doctor's office, when you in the community, people can take that, another type of way. So we got to really be careful of the nonverbal communication that we display. So that's some of the things, or, the rolling their eyes. When you young, our kids roll their eyes, or when they're angry. We understand those, the smiling, the happy, or, or just put your hand on your shoulder, on your side. What are you trying to say? Or when you moving your fingers, those, or when you clapping to every syllable. Now those is some of the things that we really have to be careful, but we don't realize of the nonverbal cues that we give out. But when we take care of people, we don't really think about that. So number one is you got to determine how the person communicates. And also, the trick to that is communicate with them on their level, not your level. Because if you communicate with them on your level, then you're frustrated. Because Johnny just going to look at you like you crazy. You could jump up, you could write down, you could pound the wall, you could fall down like they fall. You have to communicate with them on their level and figure out how to communicate with them. Number 2, implement skill building. When I think about implementing skill building, I'm really thinking about you could make a photo book, you could teach sign language, you could just teach them the skill building to help them communicate better. At first it's going to be kind of hard because they're not going to, if I've been communicating with gestures or body language or just my own made up sign language, and the caregiver feel like, you know what, let's go to pictures. But because I'm feeling kind of frustrated and I think the pictures will be good for me and you, for me and the person I'm taking care of. And then, if we could find a way to communicate effective, maybe we can decrease behaviors, maybe we can enjoy, our time, on shift. You could make it a lot easier providing care. For example, they could just point to a picture for bath time. They could just point to a picture they're thirsty. They could just point to a picture food time. It could just make it a lot easier for the nonverbal or verbal limited. Verbal limited, a person could just say yes, no, hi, bye. That means they're not going to have a fluent conversation with you. It's just very limited. It's just a couple words that they know. You would think because they verbal limited, it'd be easier to communicate, but at times it's not always. So at times it can be challenging with limited verbal, because some people might think because Johnny know 5 words that he's verbal. Yes, he is verbal, but he's very limited with his vocabulary. And that could be misleading. Because the staff could go to the house and say, I asked Johnny, was he hungry? He said, yeah. And then the other staff or a person could come in, a caregiver home, which take care of their family, and they get frustrated. Like, I thought you said that Johnny could say that he communicate. Well, the person coming in could be communicating more words that is not in his vocabulary. And the caregiver that, takes care of Johnny on a consistency basis know the words that Johnny knows and that understands him. And that's one of the things I would say, for the caregivers that in a family home, it's good to make, I want to say, a communication log, write down, how Johnny communicates, what he likes, what he don't like, the words he know, especially if it's really limited. Because if a person come in, a respite, somebody providing, a break, or a person just coming in allowing you to run errands, they would not be able to read up on him, and then they would know how to communicate. Because it's frustrating going in somewhere and not knowing how Johnny communicates. Let's talk about working in the group homes. When you work in the group homes and things like that, they have paperwork, they have ISPs, and in other settings they have IEPs that talk about how the person communicates, how the person display behavior. If Johnny do this, what do we think it means? And what do staff need to do? So there's a lot of things that are written down that help caregivers. And if you are a family member that take care of your loved one, I think it's a good idea to make a chart, or just have a book in your own home. So people coming in, it could be holidays, people coming in your holidays, maybe they would need to read up on some information. And that could be helpful, because if Johnny going around talking to different family members, it's good for the family members to know how to respond, what to say. What are his triggers? What is good not to say that he could really go into behaviors and tear up the whole house? Or are you visiting a family home during the holidays? So it's a lot of different things, and why a communication book is very very helpful to others, that work to other people coming in helping with care. Also, my number third on my list, have patience and be consistent. If you're working on skill building, if you're doing graphs, if you're doing, photo books with pictures, if you're doing sign language, if Johnny tried to, communicate like he used to, enforce the new ways of communicating, grabbing a book, pointing at pictures, doing the sign language that you guys are working for. It is very important to be consistent and have patience and realize you are a caregiver. They are individual. You are taking care of your loved one for a reason. You have to realize that when you're a caregiver providing care, because it could be frustrating. I think sometimes that some people be so high functioning and that we forget that we caregivers and we just like friends hanging out. And then when something happens and when you're not consistent, then you angry, then you mad, then you're upset, then you're frustrated. You got to really realize and always keep in mind that you're a caregiver. That means if a person have, and I'm going to go in another way, when a person have behaviors, and they always have behaviors, do not put yourself in vulnerable situation. For example, do not put yourself in corners where they could back you up in corners. You always got to remember that you are a caregiver, no matter high functioning or high low functioning. And it's a reason, and that's why it's so important to remember how important skill building is, because skill building is learning. Skill building is teaching. So we always have to remember that, to always have patience and always be consistent. And remember, you are a caregiver, or you caring for your loved one. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind and never forget. I'm not saying you treat them any type of way. You always do your job with integrity. But you just got to always remember the why. Why you there. Why you there? Because a person have a diagnosis. No matter if it's special needs, no matter if it's dementia, no matter autism, no matter what the diagnosis, just always remember you are a caregiver. You have that patience is a virtue. And you got to always remember to be consistent. And number 4, enforcers. Positive enforcers. When they say that sign language, when they get it right, when he points to that picture, when if he just do this and he let you know that he wants something to drink, or when he do toilet in sign language, positive enforcers, whether it's his favorite snack, whether it's his favorite candy, whether take him to his favorite place, or go to the store with him, of course, and take him to get a book, especially if he loves books. We got to always remember those positive enforcers, how healthy it is, how great it is, and how it's a great tool for, skill building. It's a great tool for teaching. Because if I know, if I sign, or if I do a gesture, or if I communicate, the way that we've been learning, then I know that I'm going to get candies, gummy worms, my favorite book, favorite places. And just thinking of potty training, if you're a parent. When Johnny used the bathroom, you're like, yay, Johnny! And you're going in their cabinet and you're giving them all the candies and all the now laters, and you just giving them that high five, and you just so excited, and it makes Johnny excited. It makes Johnny think, well, I'm going to do this every time because I want that reward. And that's a positive enforcer because you adding something to it. So that same excitement and that same hype, it works the same when you skill building, when you teaching new communication methods, and how, number 3 is you have to be consistent. Positive enforcers, people look at it, well, that's just bribing them. You just bribing them to do that. You giving them a candy. They should do it on their own. They should do this. You have a lot of naysayers, but positive enforcers work because Johnny wants that candy. It works for us. The positive enforcers work for us. It really does. I'm going to just think about it at our jobs. We have month clubs. Every month, employee is recognized. And when they're recognized, they might get an award, their picture on the wall, their name, to show they're the best employee for the month. They got them numbers. It's the same for us. We want to be recognized. We wanted that just like growing up when you get good grades. $5 for each A. I got 10 classes. I'm going to get A's in all these classes because I want my funds. I want my coins. Positive enforcer really work with people when you're doing skill building, and you got to really realize if 90% of communication is nonverbal, we have to really, and not just with our individuals and our caregivers we work for. What about, the people we live with? Our children communication, our husband communication, our parents. We have to really be careful how we nonverbal communicate, and especially with our individual. If we come in angry on shift and we got attitude, the individual knows that as soon as you walk in the door. Because if you've been working with Johnny for 20 years, you come in there singing, you dancing, you got the moves that Johnny likes you. She in a good mood today. We gonna go in the community. We gonna do all these great things. But let you come in, slam the door. Let you come in. The tone of your voice is different. Your facial expressions is just off. You got your arms crossed. You got your hand on your hips. You talking to him, point your fingers. He's paying attention to all your nonverbal cues. And the first thing in his head is going like, here we go again. She ain't in a good mood today. I worked in a behavior unit in a day program. When they sense, when an individual or a person sense that you're in a good mood, sometimes they join you in that same type of mood. They started falling out on the floor. They start screaming. They go in attack modes or things like that. So you got to, we as caregivers, just like we talking about how to communicate with them, with people with nonverbal, we have to be careful of the nonverbal cues that we giving off. It works the same when we go on job interviews, when we crossing our arms like this, or this, or things like that. So people, if nonverbal communication is 93% at caregivers, we really need to be mindful for that. And I do have a Tea Talk nugget for for this topic is that we always got to remember why we a caregiver. The whys. And for people, whys could be, my mother got sick and I took care of her. It could be, I have a passion for people. I love taking care of people. I love helping people. I love assisting people. If we could always remember those whys, we are a caregiver. When time get rough, we could always stay anchored. We could always stay professional. We could always stay professional. We're just going to say we could always stay professional when we're providing care. When they call us out of our name, when they disrespect us. And as a caregiver, you know, when you're dealing with physical aggression, the slapping, the kicking, the choking, the hair pulling, the biting. I have been, you know, in the field since 2012, and everything I named, I have experienced. But when you know your whys and why you are a caregiver, and when you have a passion for caregiving, when the bad days come, you won't go out of character. You'll be able to remain professional. So that is the Tea Talk nugget for this session. Thank you for tuning in. And always remember, this channel believes a caregiver role is advocacy, skill building, and ensuring health and safety. Peace.